Okay, thanks guys for joining today. Let's just give it a second for everyone to join. Okay, okay. Whoever is attending, can you guys hear us well? Okay, I think yeah, we are all set. So let's get
I'm
started.
not I'm not hearing anyone other than you, Sudhir.
Yeah, nobody is also speaking Danish.
Yeah, we're just waiting for
Okay.
Sudhir to start.
Yeah. So yeah, let's start with the intro. So thanks guys for joining. So today's session is a part of the Canada IT Club initiative on Canada IT Club's initiative on this meetups. We have these meetups every week. So basically, Canada IT Club is a community that brings in IT professionals from all across Canada. It serves as a hub for networking and learning, exploring new features, and building your relationships along with network. It also serves as a platform for continuous learning and professional development. So we have these sessions every week, and I invite industry experts to talk about some particular topics. And today's session is mainly based on the IT contracting. So we had the session one last week, and it unfortunately I didn't record it. But actually, what happened is it was like a huge informative session, and a lot of requests came in for a follow-up session on the Q&A, and also for recording for the session. And unfortunately, we were not able to record it, and I thought that okay, let's do the one more session with the same topic. We will try to cover as much as possible, which we did during the session number one. uh, so the views expressed in this session is strictly personal opinions by myself, Sajid, Srijata, and Danish. It doesn't represent any perspective of our employer, customers, or clients. The content is shared only for informational purposes, and case by case it differs. So you have to do your due diligence before you make any decisions. So in case you need further details or further discussions, you can feel free to reach out to any one of us. So today's session, I have invited Sajid, Danesh, and Srijat. So myself, Danesh, and Srijat, we have been contracting in this Canada industry for a long time. I myself is working with one of the banks as a contractor for the past 6 years, in and out, of course. And Sajid is my partner in having all these sessions. So Sajid is having one session this coming Wednesday. Correct me if I'm wrong, Sajid.
Yeah,
And
we're
we
having a
have
session on Wednesday. Yeah.
yeah, and we have a couple of sessions planned for next Monday, which is for the QA audience for in Canada, and next Wednesday also we have another session coming up. So the objective of this session is basically sharing information, building your professional network in Canada, and yeah, that's the sole purpose of these kinds of sessions. So thanks, Sajid, Danesh, and Srijat for accepting my invite and joining for the second time on this session. I believe that we may have to go for a third session because this is a vast topic. At that time, I'm planning to invite a tax consultant, a professional tax consultant, who will guide you on the details of the taxation of contracting. But we'll try to cover as much as ground today. So thanks, Ganesh, Srijat. So let's get started. So I'll try to ask the similar kind of questions last time we had. So Danesh, can you start with a quick intro on your contracting life, and uh, can you after that can you just explain how or what is a incorporated contracting in Canada?
Oh, well, okay. So that's a loaded question, Sudhir. You have asked me a lot to be shared in just one question. So let me try to make a quick recap of this basically. So in terms of the contracting life, it's been suddenly a roller coaster life for last 7+ years I've been living through. So it's been rewarding and challenging, keeping myself on the toes. So everything is there. It is like thrill ride. You are never out of adventure. You are always having something to keep you challenged and keep you on your toes throughout your working life, day every day and day in day out. I call it basically contracting life is kind of like pretty equivalent to what we call in India like more of a daily wager, right? You get to pay for what you work for, and it keeps you on your toes throughout. So that's been my journey in terms of my contracting life. So I will share more insights as we move along, but it certainly kept me hungry for upskilling myself continuously, making sure that I'm creating those relationships across the industry and making sure that I am being useful and meaningful and outcome oriented for my clients. So that's the crux of it. So how this works is basically, and probably last time around, Sudhir, we had a little context of you talking about different types of employment available. Here today, we are not going to get into the details of either FTE or T4 contracting. So I will stay away from those because those could be pretty controversial and in themselves are pretty demanding in terms of what all ins and outs of their and do's and don'ts. So I will stay away from that. In terms of the incorporated consulting, this consulting is basically you create an organization of yourself and you become employee of your organization. So basically you incorporate an organization, and then that organization enters into agreement with other organization where you provide your services on behalf of your organization as an employee of your organization. So in nutshell, that's how incorporation works, because that way you become part of your organization's employee network, and you could be just one employee and there could be multiple employees. It depends on how you want to expand your organization, and there are multiple things that could be talked through by our tax experts and all. I will stay away from that, but in nutshell, this is how incorporation and incorporation employment works. I'm not sure how detailed you want me to go, Sudhir, on this, or you are going to bring in questions like different segments.
Yeah, we will get into the different
Okay.
segments. So whoever is attending this session, so we are going to cover the basics of incorporation in Canada, how incorporation works, what is the difference between an incorporation versus full-time employment, what is the pros and cons of getting incorporated versus full-time, and vice versa, what is the pros of being a full-timer versus incorporated. We'll cover the basic taxation of how incorporation works. We will cover the interview process, how it is different from an incorporation versus full time, and that's the main topics which we will try to cover, and we'll try to take the questions. So you can ask the questions through the comments, and we would be happy to answer the question as and when that particular segment is there. So let's get started with Srijat. Srijat, how does the interview process, or how does a recruiter reach out to the candidate for the contracting, and what is the process for that, including the RTR? Can you just explain the entire process of the recruiter reaching out, and how it is the second part is how it is different from full-time employment interviews. Srijat, you're on mute.
Always. Thanks,
Yeah.
Adit. So, um, first of all, when the primary difference between the hiring process for contracting and full time is the depth to which an organization would go, right? So here is how typically an organization would try to fill a contracting role. Once a need is identified and an organization determines that there is not a permanent need, it's a short-term need, so they cannot open a requisition for a full-time employee, a manager would open in their staffing system, they would open a requirement, and through the process that they follow, they will expose it to one or more of their vendors. So to take a specific example, let's take a bank. Let's say we go with TD. Just as an example, I'm not saying this is the exact process. TD identifies a need for a data scientist. They don't need that person full time. They open a contract rec. They share it with, sometimes they share it with just one vendor. They sole source it, or they may share it with multiple vendors, tier 1, tier 2, etc. Now, these vendors, and I'm sure Sajid can speak more about it, but from my understanding, first of all, they are active in the market, figuring out and maintaining lists of good candidates that they already know about. And in some cases, there are personal relationships also, so they may reach out to them. Or they will go with your LinkedIn profile or other social profiles, right? So remember this one thing that is very important. Networking is important. If a recruiter knows you and they come up with an opportunity, they encounter an opportunity that they know is a fit for you, they'll reach out to you first because low risk for them. The second thing after that is your LinkedIn and other social profiles. Have a good profile because that is a key factor. Now, based on this, what they do is they either call you or email you. Some of them use automated emails, whatever it is, and they say, here's a job description. If you're interested, respond back with answers to these following questions. Now, and or sometimes, and even in the first email, they might ask for a right to represent. We'll cover that in a second. So typically, they'll ask for your resume. Now, the reason they're giving you the job description before asking for the resume is so that it gives you an opportunity to tweak your resume to match that requirement, if necessary. Now, make sure that you're not lying, but at the same time, all of us have done a lot of things. So make sure your resume speaks to the requirements. Then they'll ask for some personal details. Other than name, date of birth, and other things, one of the key thing that they'll be interested in is your eligibility to work in Canada for any employer. This is where a lot of people encounter problems because they'll just say yes, even though they're not eligible or not in the country, and it results in a lot of frustration. We'll come to that in a second, or we'll cover that later, right? And they ask for the date of, not the date of birth, they ask for the month and day of birth, and maybe the last, I think, 3 digits of your social insurance number. And then they will probably ask for what is called a right to represent. These 3 things go together. Here's why. In Canada, when a contracting vendor represents you to a client, the expectation is that you're represented only by one vendor. Otherwise, the reason is that vendors get paid when a candidate they present clears the interview, starts working, then for every hour they work, a certain portion of the billing rate goes to the vendor. And to determine who should be credited that, this requirement is necessary. So when a vendor asks you for a right to represent, what they're saying is that we and we alone will present your profile for this job code to this particular employer. Many people get into trouble. Many people coming from outside of Canada get into trouble with this because they think that, like in India, you can give your resume to everybody. They all present. The employer picks up from one person. It maximizes their chances of getting an interview and getting the job. It is the reverse. Because when you give a right to represent, it's exclusive. And you give you the last 3 digits of your SIN, your first name and last name, and your month and your date of birth. It will establish a unique record in the system. No matter how many people you give your resume to for the same job, Only the first one will go through, the others will be flagged by the system as duplicates. And when that happens, in most cases, not all, but in most cases, all of these vendors and that employer will get a bad impression about you, and some of them will black flag you, which means they will not automatically reject your resume for any future job opportunities. It also causes a reputation risk. So be very careful. Now, in the last session and before that also, some people have said, I inadvertently gave the same, gave multiple RTRs for the same job. How can I stop this? So every job would have a job code. So when a recruiter approaches you, ask for the job code. You ask for of course, you ask for the role, the job description, all of this, employer, etc., but ask for the job code. That will be unique. Keep a tracker. Have the job code, who you gave the RTR to. Next time somebody calls and talks about this, just ask them for the job code, find it in the Excel sheet or notepad window, whatever it is. If it's already there, just say, I've already given an RTR, I cannot give it to you anymore. Nobody will press you because they understand that you cannot have multiple RTRs. Now, let's go on. So you're given an RTR, your resume is sent, your resume was, made it through either the initial human review or the ATS review, whatever it is, it's in the hand of the hiring manager. And they do their, assessment and they shortlist you. We'll not get into all of that because that's fairly common practice all over the world. They want to talk to you. Here's where one key difference occurs. For a contracting job, usually there is one round of technical interview. It could be one-on-one or panel interview. Sometimes that is all there is. Sometimes there could be a second level interview. Whereas for a full-time position, you'll have an initial recruiter interview for fitness. Then you'll have a technical interview with your peers. Then there could be a hiring manager. Then there could be a senior leadership interview for cultural fitness. The reason is that when you're applying as a full-timer, they're looking at the long-term relationship. So they want to make sure that you will come in, you'll be productive, you'll be a cultural fit, you'll not cause problems, everybody will like you, and they try to determine as much as is possible. And the reason is that unlike in the US, employment protections are slightly better in Canada. So they find it difficult to let people go. So they hire cautiously and they hire deliberately when it's a full-time role. But the contractor, they do the interview. Their expectation is that other than the initial setup and everything, you hit the ground running, contribute from day 1 or day 3 or whatever it is. Now, the other thing is that, there are two types of contracting. We will not go into T4 contracting. For incorporated contracting, you need a company. I'm sure we'll discuss that. So if you are selected for a job, what usually happens is that your company and the vendor's company, not the bank, but the vendor's company, will enter into an agreement to position you as a resource at the bank. And in return for that, the bank will pay the vendor some money. They will take their cut and they'll take care of some expenses related to building, etc. And they will give you the negotiated rate to you. Not to you, sorry, to your company. And we will cover the rest of that whole financial shenanigans.
Yeah, we'll cover that financial later. Right. Okay, thank you, Sridhar. So there are a couple of questions here. One is, can the temporary workers on work permit incorporate in Canada? Yes, you can incorporate in Canada. And if you don't know how to incorporate in Canada, you can actually go to that canada.ca website. All the details are mentioned there. If you still need some help, I will be happy to provide the accountant numbers. You can reach out to them. They would be happy to create an incorporation for you. Incorporation, it will usually take just 1 day, max 2 days. So it's very quick process here. Okay, so we'll get started on this. So RTR, there is one question on RTR. Srijath, can you please quickly explain what RTR is and what will happen? Or maybe Sajith, what will happen if two vendors are submitting the request from the same candidate for the same job? Sajith. So this is one of the most important thing which everyone has to understand, because Srijath already explained that you cannot submit for 2 jobs. From a recruiter perspective, we will listen to Sajith to understand what will happen if the same candidate give RTR for two vendors, and two vendors are submitting his profile. Sajid.
Yeah. Before that, I'll come to what Srijit said about
Yeah.
maintaining relationship with the recruitment agencies, right? In
Yeah.
a contract position, why it is important. So how it works is, let's say there is a large corporation, they will have only 1 to 3 maximum. I don't think they will have beyond 3 for a particular set of hiring manager. Will have only those 2 3 maximum, right? Now, what will happen is the moment the agency gets the role, what they will have is they will have a set of pre-qualified people. Now, those pre-qualified people might not be actively looking, but what will happen is the moment they get the role, let's say BA in bank, they will have a, because they have worked with them in the past, many projects in the past, they will have these pre-qualified people. They will shoot all of them an email saying, we have this thing, this is the rate that we have, are you interested to have the call, right? Because speed is of importance. You need within the second day, you need to at least share 4 to 5 profiles, right? So they will send mails to pre-qualified candidates, and if there are no people in that pool, then only they will actively search in Monster or LinkedIn for other candidates, right? So you have to, before even that role comes in, you have to have that this thing. Now, what is RTR, right? Try to represent what will happen if two people, if you give that for the same role, if you give 2 RTRs, right? What will happen is 2 agencies are going to fight for you at the offer stage. Now, what Srijat told is every hour that you work is only when the agency gets money. There's no fixed amount. As soon as you are hired, you don't get the agency does not get any money. So it is only for the duration of the time that you worked that the agency will get money, right? What happens is these 2 agencies, let's say there is a conflict in that, right? Typically what all agencies will do is they will disqualify the candidate rather than going into an argument with the client. 2 agencies will not fight because both of them have an agreement with the company. Rather than having a conflict with the client, they will say that we will both eliminate this particular candidate and we'll share some more profiles. So this is what is going to happen if you send 2 RTRs to the same job code.
Thank you, Sajid. So, Danesh, there is one question where so Aman has asked a question on the dividends, but we'll come to that later. So, Danesh, what is the typical duration for these contracts? So, is it like 6 months standard? Is there any law regarding that, or is it the employer's discretion? Can you just give us an idea about the duration of the contract and how it works in this contracting world? Imagine this is for the audience who have no idea about this contracting.
Well, as I was talking about this in my intro itself, this is kind of a daily wager situation. So honestly, there is no law regarding what is the minimum duration for this. However, there is certain guidelines about the maximum duration one could be on a continuous contract employment. So the guidance is there for the maximum. There is no minimum. Your contract could be 7 days, 30 days, 3 months, 6 months, and typically in some scenarios could be up to 1 year also. So, but most, I would say, it's if you look at the ratio wise, 50 to 60% or even 70% contracts will fall into 6 months category, and then remaining is like 30-40%, and like very nominal percent is probably about 10%, maybe about 10 to 12 months range also. But largely it is 6 months is kind of a default duration, because that's the time frame you will be employed, you will be working on, and depending upon your performance, you will get renewed. And those renewals are going to be your opportunity for your negotiations also, based on how you have been performing your work, how your clients are satisfied with your performance, and so on and so forth. uh, and that will play a role in your longevity in any organization. In case of performance just being okay, so okay is not something which will get you by default renewals. Okay performance is probably for you to an indicator that you need to move on and find another opportunity. So it's going to be always the case. In terms of the maximum duration, typically in most organizations, specifically in the financial sector, or even in otherwise also, because by law, if the person is on a continuous employment for more than 2 years, they are deemed to be full-time employees. Hence, organizations put a mandatory break after 2 years for you to go out of employment with that organization and come back. And typically, that cooling off period is either 3 months or 6 months, depending on the organization's policies. So, this is how this min max kind of works out. So, you could be employed at a minimum, maybe for a week also. It's a temporary employment by default. But that's not usually the case. You will typically get 3 to 6 months assignment. There are quite a few in recent past I am seeing, which are kind of talking about 3 to 4 months kind of also, which is probably to get over the current slump that is happening in the market and budgets are tight. So that's why the more duration is coming on the shorter duration in employments that are happening in current market. But still, 6 months still are the majority.
Okay, thank you, Tanesh. So before we get into the pros and cons of contracting, so we'll skip few things. But before we get into the pros and cons of the contracting, I would like to go through the parameters which you have to look into before you make a decision whether you want to go for a full time or a contracting. It is very important. So you have to understand uh, whether you need to go into as a full time or contract based on these parameters. So again, this will change from person to person, but it's a helpful. This is a food for thought. You can actually look into this. So the first one is job security. So typically, the job security in there is no job security in Canada as such, but compared to full time contracting, job security is pretty less. Okay, this is from like the contracting and end anytime. There is just 2 weeks of notice, and it will end anytime. So compared to full time, the job security for contracting is a bit less. Purchasing the house, if you have plans to purchase the house, uh, the full time employees have a better chance of getting mortgages uh, compared to contracting. But again, we are not a professional mortgage agent. You may want to talk to your professional mortgage agent if you are planning to purchase the house. But typically, full time employees, it's straightforward for the mortgage eligibility. But contracting, it's bit tough. You need to have at least 2 years of contracting experience or the paperwork, tax returns you have to show to get qualification for the mortgages. So again, talk to a professional mortgage agent and your accountant to get an idea on this. The third one is skill set. Uh, so Srijat, what is the difference between the skill set? I mean, being a contractor, right? How important is to keep on the top of the skill set?
I think you hinted at the answer already.
Absolutely.
Okay, here's the thing. As an employee, you're in a longer term relationship with your employer, right? So before we talk about the importance of keeping current on the skill set, let's talk a little bit about how you can keep current on the skill set in both scenarios.
Yeah.
So when you're employed, your employer probably pay for certification, training, etc., etc. And with the career path, you have a gradual way of picking up new skills, learning these, and applying it to the job and all of those things because you're in a long-term relationship. When you're a contractor, you're expected to possess all the skills because they're paying you. So we'll come to this, but generally you're paid more when you're a contractor, right? In return for the risk you're taking, etc. But one of the things is that you're expected to come with all the skills that the organization needs. They're not going to train you, except for the mandatory things they have to do for security, prevention of harassment, etc. They will not train you in anything. They don't owe you anything. So the problem here is that very few or many people don't take training as a priority or show the initiative to go and get trained in new and upcoming skills, because they're like, I'm doing my work, everything is going well, so I'll just keep on doing this. But as a contractor, that will lead you to a lot of pain, or that can lead you to a lot of pain. But as a contractor, you must remember that, as Sudhir mentioned, you're 2 weeks away from ending up on the street from an office, right? So you have to keep an eye on what is coming, what is hot in the market, how the trends are shaping up, how it is affecting your industry or your target industry, and learn, and where necessary get certified also, because in Canada certifications hold a lot of weight. Many jobs ask for certifications, not just job performance. And inculcate the discipline in you to do this. Now, even if you're a full-time employee, you should do this, but the consequence of not doing this is more severe if you're a contractor.
Yeah, thanks, Sri. Yeah, thanks, Srijata. Very well said. So that is
Yeah.
the third point.
So
Yeah,
Dheer,
Ganesh.
before we move forward, I would like to add a disclaimer here.
Sure.
While Sijat said that certification is important, yes, it is. However, certification is not your ticket to employment. You have to understand your skill set is equally important, and you need to possess the skill set. And certification is just the proof that you have that skill set and opens that door for you for your interview process. And
Absolutely.
beyond that, it's all about your skill set, what you bring to the table, what you can perform, what outcomes you can bring in. That what makes or breaks your employment process.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Completely.
Yeah. Moving on to the next one, professional networking. Being a contractor, it is very important to have a great professional network here in Canada, because most of the jobs comes through networking. You have to have a very strong professional network and very good rapport with a lot of the recruiters, a lot of hiring managers, a lot of your peers, and whoever is in like good positions or banks or your colleagues. You have to have a very strong professional network, because most of the contract job first closes using the professional network. So you need to build your professional network when you are moving to a contracting thing. Attending interviews, contractors needs to be prepared every 6 months. As I said, 2 weeks, the notice is just 2 weeks. You can be the contract can be terminated anytime. So you need to be always on top of your skill set, and you should be prepared enough to have your interviews at any time. And your resumes, although resumes and interviews, all these things should be always ready. So you have to revisit your resume every 6 months or 4 months, I would say. So when I was working with Wipro for 12 years, I never looked into my resume. And when I left Wipro and joined as a contractor, it's been 6 years now. At least I have revisited my resume more than 100 times. So that is a difference. That's a frequency which you will be revisiting your resumes. Then another one is like your leave plans. Imagine you have a big leave plans, 1 month, 1.5 months leave plans. Contracting, you will not get paid. Contract during incorporated contracting or T4 contracting, you will get paid only when you are working. There is no paid leaves for contracting. So if you are on leave, there is no chance of you getting paid. So if you have a long plans, leave plans and all, contracting might not be a very good option. Again, it totally depends upon you. I am saying this, uh, contracting, there is no maternity leave or EI. So you have to be careful when you select contracting, and you have bigger leave plans. Then a lot of people here, they decide to go for contracting by looking at the spouse's visa or spouse's work. So if spouse is full time, one person will do the contracting, one person will do the full time. So that way it is balanced always. The family will have always all the coverages they need, and the other person will be worked as a contract. uh, the payment, okay. Contract pays are usually pretty higher than full time. So if I do a straightforward comparison, you can see that the take home salary or take home for a contractor is much higher than a full timer. Not much higher, but it will be a bit higher than the full timer, because in contracting you get the money, then you paid the taxes to the government, But in full time, what happens is the employer already deducts the tax and then will give you the take home. So there is a drastic difference in the take home amount you get it when you move as a contractor. So that is one of the major attractions when you try to move in as a contractor. A lot of people are very much inclined to move into contracting because of the amount contracting pays. Then cash flow. As I said, contracting cash flow is a bit higher. Then savings, retirement savings benefits. No benefits for contracting, but full time will have a lot of CPP, EI, RRSP, shares, the company's bonus, everything will be there. So nothing is available for contracting. So that is one of the major criteria where people are moving towards full time from contracting because of the benefits this company gives to them. Then another couple of things is again there is a disclaimer here. I'm not a professional immigration consultant, but processing visa. So people who are in work permit, right? They might have a challenge if they incorporate. They work as an incorporated because you cannot use that particular experience to show in during your PR process for CEC category. But again, you may want to talk to a professional immigration agent and see whether that will create an issue or not. If not, feel free to go into the contracting, but always talk to an immigration agent before you make the decision, not after you making the decision. Then discipline. Being a contractor, you have to manage all your taxes. It's too much of work. You need a accountant for that. You will have to pay kind of $1,000 to $1,500 for a good accountant here in Canada, and you will have to be disciplined with your paperwork, tax filings, managing expenses. It's totally you. Even though you are in IT, you have to learn finance and bookkeeping and accounting. These three things are mandatory when you are trying to move into the contracting. So again, I have posted all these things in LinkedIn, and I have provided the link in this comments. So please go through that and let us know in case of any questions. So now let us move on to the next topic, which is financial, which is most interesting thing, and everyone is trying to. Everyone has joined here to listen to the financials. So Danesh, we'll start with you. I believe you are the most experienced amongst all of us here, being a contractor. Um, yeah, Danesh has put on the glasses, so now we can expect some good answers.
Yeah, these are the magic glasses. These give me the answers.
Okay.
Don't try to steal them, Sudesh.
Okay. So basically, Danesh, the thing is, a lot of people are very much interested in financials, not taxes, financials. So, how good is contracting be for as a financial? Can you just give a comparison of a full time versus incorporated income? Just for a normal marginal role, just throw some random numbers.
Yeah, sure. So I will give you a quick rundown of how this works out and how organizations also try to create the rate for the contractors, basically. So, see, the whole idea of this temporary employment or contracting work is to reduce the organization's liability also. They create these roles because it helps them keep their liability in control. So it's all about keeping that liability in control. And on other side, it provides some more financial freedom to those contractors, but at the same time, it comes with a lot of self-discipline that is required. You called out those points which are required, comes with uh, when this whole flow is coming in, cash flow is coming in, it comes with a lot of responsibility and self-discipline that is required to manage those finances so that you are saving for your rainy day, you are saving for your emergencies, and so on and so forth, and also in between contracts when you are time. So basically, the payout is covers the risks associated with this temporary employment, right? So for an example, if somebody is making 100K per year in full-time employment, right? Their 100K is their base salary, right? On top of that, they are going to be eligible for and subject to the organization's policies. This could be 5 to 10% RRSP matching. There is going to be your medical and health benefits, dental benefits, your some organizations even do the pension plans, and then CPP and EI is always there anyways. And then on top of all of this, you get paid vacations. So if you are going to look at that 100K, it's not 100K. Yes, 100K is going to be your basis to get your take home every month, which is going to be coming to your to your bank account after deduction of the required taxes. But if you take other things into the account, you are probably looking at 120K or 130K. And if you throw in, some organizations pay good bonuses also, it could actually be 140K. Now, that 140K, out of that 140K, roughly 30K is notional, because you may use it, you may not use it. Only 10K is which is tangible out there. Now, when organization is trying to put a requisition, as Srijat was saying, that when they are looking for persons, they will open a requisition, right? When they are opening the requisition, they look at, okay, if we have to hire this person full time, we are going to probably be at costing at 140K, right? Now, if we pay this person $75 an hour, we get our work done. This person comes in, delivers its value, and we are not going to have any long-term liabilities. Person will be done in 6 months or 9 months, whatever the time frame is. We pay $75 an hour. Now, if you put that $75 an hour into perspective of a contractor, if you convert that into an annual pay, that will certainly be going somewhere around 140s. I'm not going to throw into the exact numbers, but if I have to do the round figure it, you're probably typically looking at 1900 or 1920 or 1940 hours, which translates to somewhere around 144, 145K. So if I round up it, it's 150K. You are making 150K in a contract employment, but you have to understand this, that you have to be responsible for your own vacation plans, your own retirement options, your own investments, your own taxations. So all that comes into that play. So this is how typically it works out. In certain scenarios, in niche skills, where the skill is niche, their requirement is very pressing, they need someone to start very next day, contracting could be really rewarding, because in those scenarios, organizations may go up higher. Instead of 75, they may pay even 80, even 85. And in scenarios like when you have certain things which are required to be met by legislation, for example, if I quote the example of accessibility requirements, a lot of resumes were converted overnight into your Node.js and all, because those were the skills that were required for making your online presence more accessible in a couple of years back. And a lot of people were making even $95 an hour. If they were in full time, they would be same 110, 120, 130 bracket. So that's the difference. If you are in demand skill, and as Srijat was earlier pointing out, you need to be on your toes. You need to look into what is coming your next, what is the skill set that is going to be required in the market. If you can forecast that, you can look into that. Like, for example, if you have invested in yourself to do something in terms of the data modelings or use of the AIs, and if you know it well, you are going to be probably hot in the market. So just giving that example, because that AI and ML and the data are the hot topics nowadays in the market from technical perspective.
Thank you, Dinesh. Before I come to Srijat on one details about this, Sajid, I have a question here. So from a recruiter perspective, right, do you get involved in contract hiring, or is it directly the hiring manager goes to the consulting firm? How does the hiring process happens where, from a recruiter standpoint, hiring for contracting? Do you negotiate the rates, or you're on mute?
No, I've worked as in an agency where I've hired contractors also, right?
Yeah.
So in that experience, so at that time we work for both the contract and permanent positions. But
Correct.
when you're as a corporate recruiter, we don't get involved in much in the whole process. In the sense, the agency will shortlist the candidate, they will do all the screening, they'll share it with, we just check whether that is the exact kind of profile that we're looking at, and then we share it with the hiring manager. So our involvement as a corporate recruiter in the hiring process for contract employees is very minimal.
Okay, fine. So it means that usually there will be a screening by the consulting firm, then the hiring manager, then maybe a second level of interview to see.
That's it.
Okay,
That's
yeah.
it. Yeah.
That's a
So
great.
once the agency shares this profile, it directly goes to the hiring manager, and then once the hiring manager shortlist, like Srijay said, max one technical interview, and we are done with the deal. Sometimes two, but most probably within one. So it's all about speed and time, right? How fast you can close it. So within one interview, they'll close it up.
That is great. That is great information. Srija, so when Danish was explaining about these the financial numbers, right? I'm sure that a lot of people might have a question. Can we negotiate the rates? How do we negotiate the rates? And do we have any appraisals, or do we have to wait for 1 year to negotiate the rates? I know we had a big chat on this today in our group, but I just want your input, because a lot of people might be wondering how the negotiation for contracting works. In full time, you can negotiate the leaves, work from home, all those things, right? Contracting, what all things you can negotiate? Tricky question, bouncer. Cowboy.
You're putting Srijay
just,
in the right spot.
No. I'm just trying to keep it suitable for the audience, because the conversation we had was okay.
Correct. Yeah.
So here's the thing: as a contractor, you are a hired gun. Nobody has any commitments to you. If you get, even as an employee, nobody has a lot of commitments to you, but there is something. But if you get hit by a bus, the only thing that the company is going to do is, okay, now I have to go through this entire process again to get somebody else. That's the extent of their commitment to you. So if you want to know how indispensable you are to the organization as a contractor, do this. Get a bucket of water, put your hand in it, take it out. The size of the hole that remains after you take out the hand, that is how important you are to them. Get this through your head. Many people will tell you many things, but this is the reality. So, can we negotiate? I'm going to steal from what Sudhir said in the chat earlier. In our group, there's somebody working as a PM for $35 an hour. And Sudhir said 100, but I know people who are working for $130 an hour.
I know, even I know.
Right? So, what is the difference between these two people? One negotiated better, or one had a better brand image, or one was introduced by somebody that sold them well. But essentially, this whole thing is not about what you have on your resume. Or look, of course, you need to have the skills. Of course, you need to be able to do the job. All of that is taken for granted. Let us say two people like that go for the same job. Even then, there will be up to 25-30% difference between what they get, purely based on negotiation. So yes, you are selling your time as a contractor. If you negotiate while buying a house or selling a car, you need to negotiate when you're contracting. Now, with that said, you need to be realistic. Don't do this whole thing like, go. Okay, let me start with $300 and work my way down. They will reject you. Nobody has time for that. Here's the breakup. So imagine a cup of frothy coffee or beer or whatever it is, right? Okay, to keep it simple, an organization usually has a rate card that they try to follow. With exceptions for niche skills and a little bit of wiggle room that hiring managers or their seniors have in terms of approving things, they want to stay within that, because that is what's been signed off and approved with finance. That is what project managers use to cost everything out. If you bring in somebody way above that, that causes a lot of problems, right? So you have to be mindful of the fact that there is a hard wall behind all of this. If you try to run into that at high speed, you will get hurt. But here's what happens. When a company requires, and again, Sudhir, you explain this better. I'm just repeating what you said. When a company has an opening, they say, okay, I'm willing to pay $100 an hour for this. Thing is, sometimes you get a direct source, as in the company approaches you directly. Happens they have a preferred vendor, and that preferred vendor will take like $2 to $5 for running your payroll and all of that, and the rest comes to you. That's a very rare and very good place to be in, because it's good for the company, it's good for you. But usually companies don't go through this hassle. They give it to a vendor. If this vendor staffs you, they will take typically, Sajid would know more about this, but typically based on my conversation with recruiters, 15% minimum, because without that, they will not break even with all the costs that they have to bear, right? Maybe depending upon, when I first contracted, they billed me at 120, gave me $70. I was so happy, right? So, but depending upon that, they will take some, right? But sometimes these tier 1 vendors look at this and say, we don't have the time, or we don't have the ability to chase this one-off requirement. We are looking at bigger things, like, we are staffing for a program. They throw it to the next level guys. They take another 15 to 20%. So your 100 becomes 80, 80 becomes 64. Now, within the 64, is there any leeway? Maybe a little bit, because sometimes the second guy would say, you know what, I take a little bit of a hit, and I'll also tell the other guy to take a little bit of a hit, because this candidate is great. He's going to be accepted by the client. Fine. But you're not going to get 90. Nobody is going to pay, nobody is going to take a loss to put you in a job. Right? So what you need to understand, and I'm wrapping this up, what you need to understand is that in your mind, based on, and this is where networking and industry awareness is important, you should have a general sense of where the market is. What does a QA engineer make, or what does a QA lead make? What does a Scrum Master make? All of that, you should have a general sense. And then you should look at who is coming and talking to you. If the company is coming and talking to you directly because you know somebody there, go for the max. They already love you. They want you. If the first tier vendors, deduct 20%, because beyond that, they will go and look for somebody else. And remember, some of them will actually take your RTR and not present you, just to keep you off the market. Okay. So if you negotiate hard and they say, okay, great, give us your profile, they're just keeping you on the side and presenting somebody else. So negotiate smartly, but negotiate.
Yep. And beware about all these things.
Just one point. Look at the economic scenario also, because 2022, I would say, Srijit, what you said in negotiate, you can negotiate as much hard as you want, because there was a huge skill gap demand. You could negotiate. 2023, not so much.
Okay. Thank you, sir. So
it's all about demand supply gap.
Yeah, demand supply. Yeah, true. So now moving on to the pros and cons. Before I get into the list, which I have, I would ask Danesh and Srija. So first, let's start with Danesh. One pros and con being a contractor and a full time each. What is the best thing you love being a contractor?
Well, I think that's probably not going to be part of what you call the benefits, but the biggest benefit that I see as part of being contractor is staying away from all the office politics. You can simply focus on what you need to do, what you need to deliver, and cut out all the crap and noise that you have to deal with as a full-time employee. But that is not something which is there on the list, which Sudhir will publish. But that's I call the biggest benefit of being a contractor.
Yeah, I cannot publish that. Okay, so Danesh, what is the one thing you love?
Yeah, we cannot publish, but we can share with you guys here.
Yeah. And what is the one downside of being a contractor?
Well, you are always on your toes. You always have to upskill yourself. You cannot really plan for longer vacations, because the more you take vacations, the less you make, and the less you make, it will throw off your financial budgeting.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. So, Srijat, one good thing about contracting, one pros and cons.
Next time, ask me this question first because Dhanesh took my favorite answer.
I believe
Seriously,
everyone has the same answer.
no. Seriously,
I
though,
will come up with something different, Srijat. You can take this next time.
yeah. So one wrinkle is that, right, you can never escape fully from office politics. You have to survive. So you need to have an awareness. But the thing is, you're less of a target because you're not a threat to anybody. They look at you and say, oh yeah, this guy's going to be here, he's going to do this, he's going to go away, not worth wasting ammunition on. But at the same time, in meetings and all, politics can bite you. But the thing I liked the most is
Silence.
so you do not have to, no, I'm not frozen, I'm thinking. Sometimes I do that. You do not have to if you're good at what you're doing and you're confident about what you're doing, you don't have to overthink suggesting something or making changes or proposing things, because you're not, like I said earlier, you're not a threat to anybody. If they don't like the idea, they'll say no. If they like the idea, they'll say yes. There's no calculation going on behind that. So what I like the most is the creative freedom you can bring to your job. Whereas as a full-timer, you have to watch, how is this going to affect my appraisal?
And what
I
is the
don't.
downside?
Downside of contracting, okay, that depends a lot on person to person, because many of the things that we are high, and I'm not stepping on anybody's toes, I'm not arguing with any of you, I'm just putting this in a different perspective, so don't get me wrong. Okay, many of the things that are highlighted as the downsides by many people, for the right person, those are upsides.
Yep.
So take one example, vacation, right? Now if you think that, okay, all of us are like, have wife, kids, house, mortgage, etc., yes, that is a disadvantage. But let's think about a person who is like, who's single, wants to work only 9 months, wants to travel for 3 months. Contracting is made for him, because a full time, you go and say, I'll work for 9 months, I'll disappear for 3 months, they'll say disappear now.
That's true.
Staying on your toes. So objective thing is that if you're career minded, if you want to see a C at the beginning of your designation at one point, staying in contracting for a long time will not necessarily harm it, but can delay it.
Yeah.
Right? And all this politics that you're avoiding as, while being a contractor, is valuable training for executing that role that you're staying away from.
True. Point set. Okay, thank you, Sridhar. Now let me go through the list of the pros and cons which I have noted down.
Before that,
So-
Sudhir, quickly,
Yeah.
Sridhar, you complained that Danesh took your story line. You took my line. I was about to give you an example of why one great contractor that I admire. He told me this: every 6 months, he will only take 6 months contract, right? And after that, every 2 months, he and his wife, they go to all the countries in Europe. They go to all the countries in South America. He comes back. By the last 2 to 3 weeks of his vacation, he would have contacted he just has 4 or 5 recruitment agencies. I was one of his in one among those 4. He'll contact us, he'll land the next 6 months job, and this is his journey. So yeah,
That is check with him now, because of the variable rates right now what we have, right? I don't think that 6 months working. It will no longer work, I believe. Just check with him. Okay.
He might have gone with a fixed rate, Sudhir. He's a smart guy.
Renewal.
Guys, there is nothing that selling a kidney will not solve.
Yeah. Okay, so moving on to the pros and cons. We are on time. So right now, pros and cons of full-time employment. Okay, so better job security compared to contracting. It is better job security for full-time employment. Career growth. People who are more inclined towards their career growth, career perspective, and all, full-time is their way. That's easy for them. Third one is appreciation, rewards, and recognition. Contractors might not get all the appreciation, rewards, and recognition from the company lot of the things are only for full timers. So if you are so keen to get appreciations and all, full time is all your way. Benefits: full time employees have huge benefits when they work for a good employer. Contractors have zero benefit out of it. You will have EI, CPP, then shares, company shares, then all the bonus and everything for full-time employees. Keep in mind, for incorporated contracting, there is no EI if it's a job loss. There are only 6 criteria where you can apply for EI. It's a bit complex for incorporated, but keep in mind, if it's for a job loss, there is no EI for incorporated contracting. Now I'll tell you the cons of or downside of full-time employment. Tax. Taxes eat a lot of our salary. So 100K, 26K will go as a tax, federal tax, provincial tax, EI, CPP, and all. So you will end up by like 72 to 74K. On top of that, if you provide it for RRSP, what will happen is, again, that amount will go down. So even with 100K, the net amount what you are taking home will be very less. Then second thing is remuneration is take home. Take home is lesser compared to the contractors. Contractors will have more take home. Full time will have lesser take home. The third is one, again, might not be true for everyone, but if you get stuck up with a bad manager or a bad team, right? Full time, you will not enjoy the full time. You will have a bad time for that team for 1 year, 1.5 years, something like that. Contractors, if they get stuck up in a bad team, they can anytime move out. So it's not a problem. So as I said, with a bad manager or a bad team, I'm not sure being a full timer, whether you will enjoy that tenure or not. Now coming on to the pros and cons of contracting. Pros: first thing, financial take home is much higher than full time. Better tax management. If you get a very good accountant and if you learn the financials, right, how to bookkeep, how about accounting and all, you will be able to save a lot of money. We will cover the taxes in our next session. I have invited one accountant, professional accountant, to come and explain us about the incorporation taxes. Then the third one is not worried about the appraisal. The pros of contracting is that you don't have to work for appraisal. You don't have to work for 1 year just to get a appraisal. No, that is not required. For the past 6 years, I have never submitted an appraisal. But again, renewing the contract is a kind of appraisal, but you don't have to write anything that I did good job, nothing like that. Then if you are smart, if you are talented, if you have niche skills, you can renegotiate your rates at the end of the contract. So if it's a 6 months contract, you have the ability to renegotiate your rates at the end of 6 months. If you are doing excellent in the team, you can actually renegotiate the rate. You can say that, okay, my contract is over. If you want me to stay here, I need so and so. That is the pros of contracting. Now, downside of contracting. First thing is job security. Compared to full time, contracting job security is very less. Second thing is you need to be always on top of your skills. You can never relax, at least for 3 months. No, because you have to be prepared for the interview anytime, right? Because of the lack of job security, you have to learn what is currently happening in the market, what is the latest trend in the market. You need to build your professional network. That is very important. The professional network should be very much active. You need to have everyone in your, like, you have to at least have a chat with your professional network once in a while. Keep that network alive. That is very, very important. After 1.5 years of contract, you reach out to someone for help, he might not help. So you have to always give and take and build your professional network in contracting. Tax filing. You have to be very disciplined, very knowledgeable about taxes and the financials. It is very important. If you are like new, you need to have a very good accountant, or else you will end up paying a lot of penalties, because in incorporation, what happens is you are paying all the type of taxes to the CRA, and if you are not paying it on time, you will end up paying the penalties. The penalties are a bit high. So you need to have a very good accountant. You need to have a very good calendar of when to pay what taxes. Again, we will cover the taxes in our next session in detail. But this will actually help you in understanding uh, what are the taxes for contracting. But you need to be very disciplined, and you need to pay all these taxes from your incorporation. And you need to be very good with numbers. You need to be disciplined with your bookkeeping. Those things we will try to cover during our next session. So Danesh and Srijat, one thing as Danesh said, I have to add is politics, staying away from politics, but I cannot officially add it. But other than that, is there anything which I'm missing, which you want to add?
The variety of work that you get is usually much more
Yep.
much more variety when you're contracting.
That's right. Yeah.
So
You can actually move from team to team, learn new types of work, learn new skill set, learn new career paths, and you can select whatever you need. That's one of the good things. Yep.
correct. I mean, I typically try to steer away from I have done this, I have done that, etc. But I'll make an exception here because I was contracted. I worked in a lab, right? I worked in a startup environment. I consulted for just a purely spin-off organizations. These are things you don't get to do as a full-timer. Or if you try to do that, right, because the spin-off closed in 3 years, right? If I had worked there full-time, that would have been a traumatic experience. For me, it was a very enjoyable experience. Even knowing it was going to close, it didn't affect me. That's one thing. As to this doesn't happen everywhere, but one thing is that there are certain organizations, and I've been lucky to stay away from most of them, but there are certain organizations that actually visibly discriminate between contractors and full-timers, not about job security, but also when taking on board opinions. If you find yourself in such a position, exercise your prerogative. I mean, I know it is difficult to do that now. Don't do it now. But at the first available opportunity, move on.
Yep.
Don't put up with it. Luckily, such organizations are few and far in between, but they do exist.
Oh, yes.
And if it happens, remember just one thing: it is not you, it is the organization's fault.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. That's a great, Srijat. So I wanted to
Just to build up on that, as you get to.
Okay.
Sorry, Sridhar, you were saying something?
No. Go ahead, Danesh, please. Danesh, can you hear us?
No, I was
Okay.
saying that just to build up on that as a contractor, yeah, I can. Can you not hear me?
Yes.
Looks like there is some lag.
That's correct.
There's lag.
There is a lag. Danesh, let me try to tell few things. Okay. So first thing is Hitesh had asked
Yeah,
a very
I will let you take the response from. It looks like my net is acting up.
Sure. Yeah. So Hitesh asked a very good question. Getting direct contract roles when we know the managers, thereby avoiding huge cut to agencies. Do you know if that is true? That is one of the very good questions for today. Hitesh, yes, that is absolutely correct. Srijat had already explained it. I'll just explain with an example how it works. So if imagine there is a client A. Client A will have a role for a maybe $100. What happens is client A will give it to the vendor B. B will take that $20, 20% of it, and B will publish that role for $80 per hour. B is giving it to the vendor C, sub-vendor C. What C will do is C may take 20%. C will publish that role for $60. And what happened is this candidate who is trying to apply for the role with the vendor C, he will end up getting only $60 instead of the $100. That is how it works. So if you know that directly the client manager, you can negotiate up to $100, and the client manager would be happy to give the $100 to you, and you can avoid all these $40 per hour by these agencies. That is where the professional networking helps. You need to have a wonderful network here in Canada to get those things. That then what the client will do is, client will tell to the A that okay, just run his payroll and may just give $1 or $2 or $2 to $4 for that vendor just to process your payroll. You will get the max $100 per hour in this example. Okay, it will work actually. So that is absolutely true. That is a very good question which was there. So now there is another question: how easy would it be to break a contract which says 12 months? That one already signed. Sorry, didn't you? How easy would it be to break a contract? So I would let Danesh answer this question. Danesh, somebody wants to break a contract which is signed for 12 months. It seems like Danesh is having a delay. Sajid, do you want to answer that?
It's a normal notice period, right? So
Yep.
this is the problem. So when Srijat and you also mentioned about networking, right, with the set of people that you are doing business with, it's a very small. How much big the Canada IT market is? It's still a very small niche market, right? And especially with contractors, you will need the service, because what happens is, I know agencies which have clients for 15 to 20 years. And what happens if you break a, see, it's not, I'm not saying that you can't break it, but be aware that it's a very small niche market, and you don't want to burn bridges. That's all. If you do it. You just need to give 2 weeks notice and you can move out of it. That's not a big issue. I would suggest is, if you want to do that, do it, but also say that, hey, I have a couple of friends who you can either share it with the hiring manager or the recruitment agency and say, I have a couple of friends who are interested. And in that way, you're mending that breakup.
Yeah, never burn the bridge. Okay, thank you, Sajid. So I think we are way over time. So next session we are having with the tax accountant, where we'll be discussing more about the taxation for contracting, which is very important. A lot of people have requested for that. At that time, we will answer the questions like taxation and what will happen for T4 and all those things. So I see a lot of questions, but we'll take it up during our next session during the taxation. So again, whatever we discussed today is it's purely purely for informational purposes. This is our personal opinion. It has nothing to do with our clients, customers, or clients, customers, or employers. So I would like to thank Sajid, Danesh, and Srijat for accepting my invite and coming here to speak. So any closing words, Danesh?
Hi. Yeah. So now I have switched to my mobile, so probably the net connectivity is fine now.
Yep.
Yeah. So I think in terms of the conversation we had, that's great, and thank you, Sudhir, for organizing these sessions. I would call out the disclaimer again. I called out last time. We are neither the recruiters nor the contracting agencies, and we do not provide employment. We provide the guidance and we provide the answers to your queries that you may have in the new country. That's our role in this whole context. So please do not think that we are going to be getting to any hiring of any of you. So please just make sure that we wouldn't be doing those, because I get inundated with the requests about hiring and all. I just want to clarify it once again.
Okay, thank you, Danesh. Srijat, closing comments.
Please vote for me for president. No, I don't have any closing thoughts.
Okay, no, that's great, Srijat. Thank you. Sajid, anything?
I have a question for all three of you. Whenever you guys are taking the vacation to South America or Europe, that is my
December
question.
last week.
He just has surprise in his eyes. That's my final thought.
No. I was not surprised. I I was fearing that he was going to ask to come with me.
No, he is the sponsor for the trip, Srijat.
Sorry?
Sudhir is the sponsor of the trip, right?
Yeah, I am the sponsor.
Okay,
Sudhir
guys.
will sponsor, but he'll sponsor with our money. You don't know Sudhir.
That is a problem.
Okay. Anyways, this was a great discussion. Thanks, everyone. So next Monday, Wednesday, Sajid has a meetup, and next Monday, sorry for that. Next Monday we have a meetup by a QA practice lead from Canada. So try to join that, and I'll set up a follow-up session on the accounting taxation part, which is very important and going to be very interesting. And thanks everyone for joining, and thank you Sajid, Srijat, and Danesh for participating and sharing a great deal of information. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for
You
setting
guys.
this up, Sudhir.
Bye.
Great effort. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
And nice to meet you again, Dhanesh.
Same here, Srijat. Thank you, guys.
Bye. Bye.